So behaviour is the study of one. I want you to tattoo that somewhere because it's really important. And the scientific study of individual behaviour, how behaviour grows, maintains and dies, is called applied behaviour analysis. It gives us principles or laws about the relationship between the environment and behaviour. And we say that those relationships, we call them functional relationships because they have influence, they have function, they influence change in each other, which is really, really cool. It takes the guesswork. Knowing a bit about applied behaviour analysis takes the guesswork out of training, and it also takes the emotion out of training. And what I mean by that is not that. I don't mean that you have to be robotic and be very sterile and unemotional. You are allowed to enjoy and love your animal. What I mean is that we don't want our emotions to guide our decision making when it comes to training. The opportunity that we have when we work with animals that we're really close to, or we work with people, owners who have, they rightly should, a lot of love for the animal, their dogs in question, then sometimes we can be driven to make poor training decisions based on that emotion. So that's what I mean by that. But you will see that I am very emotional and involved when I'm training. So not sterile at all. It's actually also a very different way of understanding behaviour cause that we are used to. Most of us grow up informally learning that behaviour is a direct result of some internal state of the animal. And this includes humans. You know, he's so hard to work with because he's so stubborn. He's so hard to work with because he's so lazy. You know, things like terms or labels like lazy and stubborn, shorthand often for a behaviour that does not have much reinforcement history for that particular animal. So a lazy person could simply be someone who has performed that behaviour a lot and has either been punished or simply not had reinforcing consequences come their way because of that behaviour. And so we call them stubborn. Now, a stubborn animal, if I label an animal, I can't really, it doesn't feel like I've got power to change it. But if I start to say, well, my dog is stubborn because he doesn't come back when he's called, but I know that really it's just not a reinforcing behaviour for him, especially in the presence of other dogs, because often I take him home or put the lead back on, then it gives me power. I can actually change and influence the behaviour by changing up the consequences that that behaviour is bringing him. And we're going to talk more about that as we go. And that iceberg there is simply a picture to remind us all that more often than not, the average dog trainer, the average animal trainer, they learn the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the science of behaviour change. And what I want you to understand is that that is fine. If that's what you learn, that's what you learn. But underneath the water, underneath that surface, there is a huge amount of information there. And behaviour is hugely complex. So sometimes when you only have the tip of the iceberg, you can sort of go, well, you know, applied behaviour analysis, okay, well, yeah, reinforcement drives behaviour and that, but what about a person who, what about dogs? What about dogs? We've all seen dogs that are harshly treated by their owners and they grovel back, and we hear people interpret that behaviour as, well, look how much he loves him, look how much he grovels up to him. We could interpret a different way, but all I'm saying is that there's lots to understand here because it is incredibly complex, and after 30 years of doing it, I kind of feel like I finally got a hold on it. That's not to say that I won't have another aha moment tomorrow as I see another onion layer, another layer of the onion unravel. All you need to really realise is that the information is there, and when you are hit with a complex problem or something that you don't completely understand, you have the opportunity to go to the source and find out a little bit more about it. So applied behaviour analysis, it studies the way that behaviour grows, how behaviour maintains, and how it dies, specifically due to certain changes in the immediate environment. So behaviour is a natural phenomenon. It's like gravity, it's always in play. And if you are training an animal and what you're doing is working, it is because, whether you know it or not, the laws of learning are being applied correctly. All going sweet and you feel good about yourself. Now, the other applies. If what you are doing is not working, it's just because somewhere along the line you've broken one or more of the laws of learning. Understand which ones are broken, understand how to fix them, and you've got it made. So if there's one thing that you remember from this discussion, from our time together when we're face to face, I want you to remember this, that there is never just behaviour. The laws of learning are all about functional relationships between the environment and the behaviour in question. So to work out why a behaviour is happening, or how to grow a behaviour, or how to kill a behaviour, that sounds awful, doesn't it? But how to change behaviour, we need to look at three things. Of course, at first the behaviour, and science calls that the target behaviour. So we need to look at the behaviour. We also need to understand what's going on in the environment before the behaviour happens. What does the behaviour have that the animal can perceive that influences the animal to behave in a particular way? Once the behaviour happens, we know that future behaviour is going to be influenced by what happens here and now. So what are the consequences? What happens after the behaviour happens, which influences that same behaviour in the similar environment in the future. So just remember, there's never just behaviour. The only way that you influence behaviour is by changing up something in the environment before the behaviour happens, or something in the something in the environment after the behaviour happens. A, B, C. Environment, behaviour, environment. And the A, B, and C all stands for specific terms, which I'm going to throw at you in just a minute. But just remember that one influences the other and influences the other. And that's the smallest unit of behaviour that we can look at if we want to look at changing behaviour. You've got to step back and look at the wider environment to see what's going on. So applied behaviour analysis, or Skinner, calls this ABC, the environment, behaviour, environment relationship, the smallest unit of behaviour analysis. It's our ABCs, because, as I've said, the only way that we change behaviour is by changing the immediate environment. We can't change behaviour directly. It doesn't work like that. So if we've got a behaviour, and science calls this the target behaviour, we know that for a behaviour to occur and to be repetitive and occur over and over, it's due to consequences, and specifically reinforcement, because consequences give an animal feedback on its behaviour. And if a behaviour is reinforced, it's basically saying to the animal, yeah, do more of that. That's a cool behaviour. That's valuable for you to perform. And the environment tells the animal which behaviour to perform over another. And we call this, or scientists call this, the antecedents, or the antecedent set. So can you see where ABC comes from? Don't worry about the big words. Just remember ABC, because the antecedents is the immediate environment. It tells the animal what to do in the presence of certain stimuli, and that behaviour will be based on the behaviour that has been valuable to that animal in the past.
He's a little zebby finch. He's a little zebby finch. Wild as the day he was
So here
born.
is a zebra finch, wild as the day he was born. Over behind are his families, the first one to fly into my hand, and now all the family come. Not only is he getting really good food, an easy food, but look around in the back. We were in a lush, beautiful time up there in Alice Springs when I was there. We had a whole year's worth of rain. It was amazing in a very short time. So there's heaps of foodstuffs around, but very easy, much easier foodstuffs on my hand than going and having to pick seeds here and seeds there. But obviously there are very few wild finches that will come and just nest on your hand. So think about it. What are some of the things that we had to do as trainers to get this behaviour to happen? What are some of the consequences that we had to give? Well, we sort of aren't going to be able to provide consequences for flying to our hand until we get flying to our hand. And we're not going to be able to get flying to our hand until we start to get trust and the animals feeling a sense of safety. And that took months and months and months. And before they ever flew to our hand, they flew to a bowl that was 10 feet, 20 feet away from us, but in our presence. Before they did that, we were in a situation where we would have to put the bowl out and then leave. But they were still associating with us still associating that food with us, weren't they? Because we brought the bowl out. So understand that the antecedents of us coming out that caused with food on our hand and causing the behaviour of flying to happen to get the consequence of the seed didn't just happen quickly. It happened over months and months and months through, you would maybe say, a shaping process. But still those that picture, the antecedent picture, and the consequences are there influencing the behaviour. Here's something a little different.
All right. See this? See this? Come in. Come in.
Ken says how many. Coral says there's 2. Gets fed from her feeder.
Can I sit over here? You.
Targets her down.
Good girl.
Reinforces.
See this? Okay. See this? Bernette, you look at these. Bernette, you look at these. You see these? Coral. You see this? Come in.
Pretty cool, huh?
I know you good girl. You lay down here. Good. Okay. You see what's in my hand here? You see what's in my hand here? I'll show you. See these? See how many you got? Coral. See how many you got there?
So he's asking how many entirely. Yep, there are 5.
Good.
And as the video keeps on going, I'm just going to turn off the sound and say to you, most people, when I'm live and we're talking about this, most people can give me some sensible, really smart answers to how we would start to work with those birds. But when I show them this video and ask exactly the same question, how do we teach our dogs to count? It's kind of a different story. It is obviously a much more complex behaviour than the birds flying to our hand in a whole lot of ways. And so often when we are faced with complexity like this and we see a behaviour that has so many moving parts as opposed to the birds flying to our hand, that is a very simple behaviour, albeit took a long time to train up because we needed that confidence level there and the feeling of security and safety before they would ever come anywhere near us. This one's very different because there are so many bits and pieces. But I want you to understand that what we see here with Ken Ramirez and Coral, the counting dog, is simply a complex behaviour made up of lots and lots and lots and lots of simple behaviors. Lots of simple, not just behaviors, but you know what I'm going to say, ABC units. And it is there that we can start to understand how to unravel and therefore break down a complex behavior like this so that we can then train it back up again.